What's up, guys? So, I just did the review to the game, and now we are on to the the uh, the wish list portion, right? So this is about NASCAR Heat 5, or whatever they call the next game. I'm gonna focus on the most important things. I'm not gonna hit a million different things. There's so much they can do going forward uh, to improve these games, but I'm gonna focus on the most important things right now, and I really hope 704 does get to see this particular video because I do believe these are the things that are going to really improve these games going forward, especially desperately needed things for the next game. Okay, so before I get into the actual list of things, I'm going to say one thing. I am aware that 704 is planning to add another series to the game. I'm not really opposed to that. I am opposed to doing that now. We don't need another series. There's so many other areas in this game that desperately need attention. So I would say just put that aside for now. Get these other things taken care of, and then you can think about adding another series. If you add another series now, it's not going to do anything to add anything to the game. And I do think it's going to take up time and resources that I would rather see that later down the line. So now I'm going to get into the list in the game. So in terms of sound, the only I'd like to see more in terms of off-track stuff. Uh, Commentary and the spotter needs to be improved. I want to see a much chattier, busier spotter. Give people the option to turn it down where it is now or increase it where I want it, where it's just constantly giving you lots of information and spicing up the on-track stuff, right? The graphics, I don't know how much really, I'm really pleased with the graphics overall. I would like to see, hopefully, an option to turn the motion blur off, or if you can find a way to get rid of some of the stuff I was talking about earlier in terms of the fuzziness, the pop-ups, the artifacting everywhere. Anything you could do to improve that, I would appreciate. Maybe just giving us that option to turn the motion blur down, that might help. Um, in terms of gameplay, mechanics, the physics, just keep tweaking it. There's room for improvement. Um, get that difficulty, you got to try to get it the same everywhere. No matter what track you're on, no matter what series you're running, the difficulty should be pretty even across the board. Don't, ask people to find little, give themselves a handicap to try to make the game harder. Just get the AI lap times where they're supposed to be, so that it's kind of even. No matter what track you show up at, when it's at the highest setting, you can expect the same level of competitiveness. So you got to do a better job of that. That might require more testing. I know that time is limited, but you got to put that time in, and you got to test these games. I don't know how they do it, right? But I'm assuming they just run quick little sprints, and you may have to just do longer races. Test these games at 50% maybe. Whatever. I'm just throwing things out there. Whatever you have to do to test these games a little more thoroughly to make sure people get that even-handed competitiveness throughout the game. The AI, I'm really happy with it for the most part. I would like to see more of an effect in terms of how the cars are in control as the tires wear. I want to see them kind of get a little squirrely and have a little more of a hard time maintaining their line that they're trying to run. Also, the rec physics or the mechanics, whatever you want to call it, do need improvement. They should play a bigger role. A lot of times now, it's the damage model is mostly cosmetic. you could still finish races. There's no DNFs. That needs improvement. And the career mode. Here we go. This is really the most important aspect that I want to emphasize. And this covers the whole game, not just career mode, but presentation. I've been screaming about this for years, and it continues to be an issue. You have to address this with the next game. You cannot release another game and it feels bare bones because there's no presentation. The first and foremost thing you can do with presentation, pre-race and post-race commentary. Intros, like we used to get in the Thunder Series. Flyovers. Gentlemen, start your engines. Watch the cars ease out onto the track for their warm-up laps. Go through the lineup. Let me hear the announcer talk about each driver, where they're starting. Throw out a little anecdote about specific drivers. We used to get that with 2004, and they're trying to get away with doing that stuff now with these stories. It's all text. It's so outdated. Get rid of all that. It's got to be commentary. It's got to be, and it's got to be animated. Get rid of. Let me save that for a second. Pre-race, talk about drivers. Talk about you, the player. Talk about where you finished in the previous race. There's so much you could talk about. You could say, hey, let's say the race is at Auto Club. Hey, last week at Atlanta, he finished 16th. And then talk about where he is in the point standings and what he has to do today and things like that. If you're later on in the season, what do how far out from the points from the playoffs that you are, or other drivers. There's so much you could do with pre-race presentation and post-race commentary after the race. Talk about what happened during the race, where you finished, where you are in the point standings, and where you are in relation to the playoffs. Do you have rivals? Did you have issues with other drivers on the track? There's so much you could talk about. That's desperately needed in these games. These games it's just race on the track, get off the track, go click a few things, and get back to the next race. You got to flesh out the rest of the game. And that's how you do it, through presentation. Please, for God's sake, get rid of these live action cutscenes. They are horrendous. I've been saying this for a while now. They feel cheap. It feels like a shortcut. And I'm going to tell you real quick why I hate these live action cutscenes. Though many of you may not remember this because you're a lot younger maybe, but way back, let's say in the beginning of the CD era for video game consoles, when we were leaving cartridge to CD, my first real experience was the PlayStation 1. But I think the first CD-based video games were were made by Sega. You guys can correct me. Don't quote me on that. But in either case, that was the very beginning of CD consoles. And leaving the cartridge era, the biggest difference is that CDs hold a lot more information, so you can put a lot more content into these games, and you can do a lot more things. So in the early stages of new technology, naturally, developers want to try new things, right? There's a lot of things on paper that sound good, and when you actually do it, it doesn't work out. And one of those things was adding live-action cutscenes to video games. So, in the beginning, I understood it, because I'm like, okay, they're trying something new. Now that you can do this, whatever. And what you got was a bunch of really crappy games that had a lot of live-action cutscenes, and they had actual actors, right? So let's say you shoot somebody, then you see a live action of a guy, but the acting was cheesy. It just didn't look right. And the biggest thing is that when you watch something that's live-action video footage, and then you go to the game, the game is animated. So there's a huge disparity there. And it's like, it's very disconnecting from the game experience. You're in the middle of a game, you're playing the game, and some live action video cutscene pops up. It's like splashing cold water on something. It ruins it. It doesn't feel right. It feels cheap, and it feels outdated, because it is outdated. Developers learned early on, this shit doesn't really work. Let's stop doing this. We tried it. On paper, it sounded like a good idea. It doesn't work. Let's get everything animated. Every cutscene, everything needs to be animated. You look at other sports titles, other games, they don't do live action, insert live action cutscenes anywhere, because it's outdated and it wouldn't look right, and it wouldn't feel right. So for God's sake, get rid of these live action cutscenes. They all look and sound cheesy, and I hate them. They make me cringe when I watch them. So move on from that. You got to animate everything in the game. It also gives you an opportunity to show off the customized characters that players make with their customized fire suits. You know, there's so many things you can do in the game where you're showing that stuff off, and it's a payoff. It gives people, you know, a sense of purpose when they spend time customizing things. I want to see it throughout the game. It's what we see in other games. I want to see it here. It's going to be the 5th game in the series. You cannot ignore presentation. So you got pre-race and post-race commentary. It's the biggest thing I would add to the presentation. But off the track, you got to do more. How about interviews? Interviews in the pits, right? Which is technically still on track, but still. I want to see interviews. I want to see how those interviews affect you. Maybe you say something that you shouldn't say, and you piss off the sponsors, or you piss off other drivers. Have interactions between you and other drivers. If you had a good finish, maybe a teammate comes up to you and pats you on the back while you're being interviewed. Or if you have rivals, or you got into someone and they come up to you and they shove you, you know, like we used to see stuff like that. Have some kind of confrontation, and then have the announcers talk about it. Maybe next week, maybe during the pre-race commentary. Say, hey, so and so and Ryan Newman got into it last week after the race. I wonder if things have cooled down since then. You know, they're gonna have to, you know, watch out for that 6 car. There's so much you can do. That's where the majority of your focus needs to be. Presentation. In the career mode, in ownership mode, right? I want to see a fucking race shop. I want to see people working on cars. I want to see, I want the ability to hire other drivers. So I want to be an owner and a driver, and also hire a second car. Have a 2-car team, and have maybe hire another driver, one of these guys from the Dirt Series, right? A made-up driver. Then you get to customize their car and their fire suit. And you get to sign sponsors for them, which are different than yours. This is all part of ownership, you know, is dealing with sponsors. And having the ability to customize the guy that drives for you is awesome too. And seeing that during presentation, it's great. But give us that ability to hire drivers. And they could be drivers directly from the Dirt Series. And it gives you more responsibilities as an owner. And not just building your cars and making them better, but also the other cars. You have multi-teams now. Customization, I talked about that in my review. Either give us a fully fleshed out paint booth, or cram the shit out of this customization. Let us color the wheels any color we want. Let us have multiple paint schemes. Right now, you just have one scheme per series. Give us the ability to have maybe 3 different schemes. And then before each race, when you click to the race, you are prompted to pick which scheme you're going to run. So before each race, you can choose which of your custom schemes you want to run. You can run multiple schemes throughout the season. There's no reason you should be locked into just one custom scheme, and then if you want to change it, you got to go back, you got to undo everything and change the scheme. No, let us save multiple paint schemes, and before each race, you have the option to pick which scheme you're going to run. Let me see this fucking race shop where they're working on these cars, and you can see your different schemes and different cars, and people working on these cars. And let you customize the fire suit for your driver as well. There's so much you can do in career mode. So besides the race shop and the garage and all that stuff, let us have a souvenir shop where you have t-shirts, hats, die-cast cars with your customized paint schemes. How cool would that be? You see a bunch of those on shelves for sale with your different paint schemes that you made. How about having these jacket, fire suits, but it's just like a jacket with the schemes you made. Have those too, right? Make it a real souvenir shop with people walking around, and you see all this stuff, and you can see how much money each item's generating. And the better you do, and the more fans you get, the more money those things make. There's so much you can do. Keychains. And even have a place for visitors, including a trophy room, and where people can come and watch the cars being worked on, but there's trophies from the races you've won. Let your imagination run wild. There's so much you can do. But you definitely got to do all that. Another thing with presentation, but this also ties in with the gameplay. You got to do better when it comes to setting up these race cars. Right now, either you're somebody who's an expert and really knows what he's doing, or you don't know anything about this stuff, which I think covers most people, including myself, and you end up getting setups from other people online. One, there's no sense of accomplishment doing that. Two, if you try to learn this shit yourself, it is fucking tedious and difficult. That's not something you want to do. It's a video game. I want to have fun. So how do you bridge that gap? I've talked about many times through the years about having an automatic crew chief. So it also solves presentation, and it also solves this part of the gameplay of the game. Have a relationship with your crew chief, a narrative throughout the game that's supported by presentation, where you are interacting with your crew chief, even off the track, back at the race shop, whatever. And on practice or testing, that's another thing you got to bring is testing. But during practice, when you're in the garage, have it where you're in cockpit mode and you have a tablet up against the steering wheel. If you watch practice, a lot of times you'll see, I'm talking about live cup practice or other, you'll see these drivers sitting in the car with a tablet, and they're looking at information, things like lap times, how other cars are running, and other things that I don't know what they're looking at, but it's information, it's technical stuff. But the driver stays sitting in the car while the crew's working on the car, making whatever changes, springs, shocks, whatever, and he's talking to his crew chief in the window, but he's also got this tablet. Anybody that really follows NASCAR knows what I'm talking about. So here's what I think they can do. And I think it would be very immersive and interactive, and I think people would love it. And it would give you a sense of accomplishment that you were actually involved with setting up the car. You're in cockpit mode, looking at the tablet, and on the tablet, you have the track map. And on that track map, the track is cut up in sections. In each section, you can click on that, and then there's a list of complaints. And you can click on that, you can give a complaint, and then the crew chief interacts with you and tells you what he's going to do to fix that or make the adjustment. Project Cars 2 has what's called an engineer, and it in a much simpler way it does that. You answer a few questions, and he kind of makes changes, and he makes adjustments to the car. But you can do that in this way that I'm talking about. Let's say you're at Charlotte. You can click on turn 2, and turn 2 is chopped up into entry, center, and exit. So let's say you click on turn 2 exit. Now you have complaints. You can say, I'm loose on exit. You click on that. Then you go to center. I'm tight in the middle. Car doesn't turn, or whatever. You click on whatever stuff, and each time the crew chief tells you what he's going to do, or he makes the adjustment, something. And you go back out on the track, you run a few laps, you come back, and then you keep doing that as many times as you want throughout practice. So now you have a relationship with your crew chief. It's cool presentation. You're there. You're looking at a tablet. You're picking parts of the track that you're having trouble with, and the crew chief tells you what he's going to do or makes the adjustments and explains certain things to you. You can learn. Now it's realistic because most drivers, that's all they do is complain. Very few drivers fully understand the setup of the car. And you don't have to be an expert. You're involved. You spend time in practice. It's fun. It's immersive, and you can be a part of setting up the car and getting that car better and better for race day. That's what I want to see. That would be amazing. It would be innovative. That's what I would push to. At least take these ideas and see what you can do with it. These games lack narrative. So you got to feel like you're always living that life of a NASCAR driver. And so far, these games are just about on track. So flesh these games out. Give us more presentation throughout the entire experience. Instead of newspaper articles, have maybe a show or something. Don't be afraid also to use fictional people. Like, let's say the announcers, just use made-up people. Get actors to read lines of script and do that. You don't have to always get licensed people. Maybe you do, I don't know. That's something only 704 knows. But anywhere you can take that shortcut and say, do we have to get this part licensed, or can we just implement something that's made up, fantasy? Anywhere you can do that, it saves time, and you don't have to go through all the loopholes of licensing, which really drag development down. Who cares if the announcers are people you never heard of? Just make people up, get some actors, and render this stuff animated, and get all of this commentary in the game. These games desperately need that, and it would add a lot to the game. If you have to get licensed people, fine, whatever. But you don't have to do that. Same thing I've talked about with sponsors. Don't be afraid to use made-up sponsors. We used to get that in NASCAR games. We need a lot more of all this stuff, and anywhere you can just use phony stuff, do it. Nobody cares as long as it's executed properly. Really, that pretty much covers most of the stuff. Of course, they have to keep tweaking the gameplay mechanics, all of that. That goes without saying. In terms of, frame rate, they do really need to try to push this to 60 frames. I don't know if they can do that yet. Maybe it's something that can't be done till the next gen of consoles. I don't know. But anything you can do to improve the frame rate would be greatly appreciated. These games should be running at 60 frames on any platform. So, the last thing I'm going to talk about is online multiplayer. The two things that I think you can do is, one, have a flag system, a way to flag people that you don't want to race with or you think are dirty, whatever. You flag them, and they stay flagged. And anytime you go to, if there's a lobby with people you flagged, the lobby, there's a flag there, and you don't have to like go in and see who's there. You just know there's people in there that you flagged. So you could still go in there, but it's up to you. If you're a host and you flagged players, they can't join your lobby. So if the host flags you, and you're not even going to be able to join. So you don't have to worry about kicking people that you flagged because they can't even join your lobby. These things are not going to solve these issues with dirty racing and all this other crazy stuff. It's not a solution, but it's a way to make it a little better. And if you're a guy who drives dirty and you got a lot of people flagging you, guess what? You're going to have a hard time finding people to race with. So that's on you. Also, offer a ghost lobby. I've talked about this before. I know there's a lot of people that say that's not realistic or that's stupid. Listen, it's an option. You don't have to do it. But at least offer a lobby where it's a ghost lobby and there's no contact. So it's really all about you versus everyone else and how fast can they run each lap. There's some good racing there. I mean, I've done it in Grand Theft Auto. They have ghost non-contact races, and those could be a lot of fun too. In either case, it's just an option. That's probably super easy to do. They could probably add that in a patch. So just as an option, throw that in there. But the biggest change to online multiplayer that I'd like to see, implement a page where you can run your own league, fully supported by stats, point standings, and a list of the people who want to sign up. They can sign up, and you, as the host, have the option to, approve them or not. If you don't want them there, you could kick them out, whatever. In that page, besides having full stat support and having full league standings and a full schedule, you can custom make your own schedule. Also have the real life schedule. In other words, let's say I want to run a league called Tuesday Night Classics, and this league's going to run, hosted by Disco Inferno 70, Tuesday Night Classics, and it runs Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That'll be at the top of the page. So if you're part of this league, you have to sign in, let's say, a minimum of, anytime before the race. Long as 7 p.m., once that clock hits, the race is going to start. If you didn't make the race, you get a DNF. That's it. You get last place points, DNF, whatever. You're good luck the next time. You could run it multiple nights, whatever. I'm just saying, let's say I wanted to do one night a week, Tuesday Night Classics, and you'll have everything there. All the settings, 50% races. Here's the standings. Here's, have stats for each player or, whatever. Fully supported by stats. And the start time of each race, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard. That's it. You're part of the league. If you don't sign in by 7 p.m. and the race starts without you, you get a DNF. That's it. That would go a long way in helping organize leagues. People don't have to do everything themselves. Everything is fully supported with stats and everything else. Point standings, whatever. And at the end of the league, the winner gets a trophy. Really cool. A lot of cool stuff you can do. I think this stuff would help really elevate online racing. Another thing, personally, I would love to see that nobody who runs less than 25% races gets stats. You want to run these quick little sprints, wreck fest all day long, go ahead. But you shouldn't get stats for that. People getting 1,000 fucking wins because they spent 2 months just running, these quick little 3-4% races, whatever, 5%, and just spend all day doing that. Make it enticing to run long races. 25% minimum, and you get stats. That's just me. And overall, also in career mode, I did mention stats. The stats they've gotten better, but they're hidden. You really got to go kind and find them. They don't have an attachment really to anything else. Stats should play an important part throughout the career mode. It should pop up during pre-race, post-race commentary. It should come up even in between. These newspaper articles should be in depth. They should talk in detail about things. Um, so they got to still do better with the stats. It's at least there are stats there. They're decent. They should be broken down season by season. Go deeper with it, and you know. But basically, those are my ideas for next year. There are other ideas, but really, these are the most important areas they need to focus on. Um, and if they want to add a series down the line, that's on them. But this is way more important. Um, and there's so many things you can do with presentation. Just let your developers let them use their own creativity. It just feels right now a lot of the off track. It just feels like a mobile game. Get away from that. Get rid of these live action cutscenes and follow these ideas. I think you're gonna have people excited. There's a lot. There's gonna be a lot more for people to do that has nothing to do with actual race day. It needs a lot more needs to happen off track. Even have it where you can quit your career mode and start a new one. And if your stats are good enough, how about a Hall of Fame induction? It's a lot of cool things you can do. So I want to know what you guys think of these ideas. Uh, Let me know what you think. Please write to 704. Pass these ideas along. I know that Sean Wilson, I heard, said that he does watch these videos, but that doesn't mean he sees all these videos. I don't expect them to. This is one I want them to see. I think these ideas are great, and I think they would elevate the series of games to another level. And these are the things that really are missing. They did a fantastic job with the actual on-track racing. It's time to start really doubling down, getting serious about the rest of this game. Um, Give us these things, and I promise you, people are going to love it. So that's all I got to say. I look forward to your comments.